Second will come to order. All commissioners are present, I think. Is Mr. Ingen on?
I'm here.
Excellent. Okay, all commissioners are present except for Chairperson Peach, who asked me to sit in as chair today until she can return. So the first matter on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion on that? We have a motion, a second. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Knopf. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the approval of the order of the agenda. And before we start on that, I've got, I would like to add juvenile detention. We know there's a matter there. And put Bridgie Hansen in right before the Director of Administration's report. So I would move that. Can anybody second that, please?
Second, Dave.
Mr. Chairman, you cannot make a motion.
I'll make the motion then.
I'm going to make the rules here, Ms. Nelson.
Oh, I see.
Wait now, just because you've had a coup doesn't mean you can make new rules.
Okay. Yeah, they're just guidelines. Yeah, okay. Commissioner Ingen made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Any other additions to the agenda? Okay. Can I have a motion then to approve the order of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Thank you,
Second.
Diane. Second by Commissioner Ingen. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Then the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any of the commissioners would like pulled?
Nope.
Hearing none, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Ross, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Rost. A second, please?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, a second by Commissioner Knopf. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And the consent agenda passes. The next matter is the public hearing relative to Red River Biorefinery. And do we have somebody for that, Ms. Nelson?
The TEFRA public hearing, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Lund to tell us what that is.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I don't know that I consider myself an expert on TEFRA hearings, though you are, my understanding is required to hold a public hearing for public comment about the proposed bonding allocation for Red River Biorefinery that I think that they'll like you to act on in just a moment or two. So I think it would be appropriate for you to open the public hearing and ask if there were additional comments or if any had been received by Ms. Nelson.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Lund. Can we have a motion to open the public hearing on the TEFRA Red River Biorefinery matter?
So move, Dave.
So moved by Commissioner Ingen. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Knopf. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is open on the matter. And is there anybody available for comments, please?
Mr. Chairman, there is no one in the room. I don't know if there is anybody online that would like to make comment.
Chairman, looks like a representative from Biorefinery has just sent a note to everyone.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. It looks like it's just notifying that he is here.
So I can tell you that I have my staff posted downstairs on first floor ready and able to open the door to anybody who wanted to attend the public hearings. And there is nobody currently here.
Customarily, no one shows up other than the interested party, so.
Correct.
So where do we go from here now, Ms. Nelson?
Mr. Chairman, I believe you should close your TEFRA hearing and
Okay.
move on to item 6.
Okay. Can we have a motion to close the TEFRA public hearing on Red River Biorefinery, please?
Make that motion, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Knopf. Do we have a second?
Second, Dave.
Second, Commissioner Engen. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed and we move on to item 6, public hearing on MITA bonds for Red River Biorefinery, resolution page 43. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I think you need to open another public hearing to see if anybody would like to respond.
okay. We seem to be spinning our wheels. Do we have a motion to open a public hearing on the MITA bonds for Red River Biorefinery?
I'll make that motion, sir.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Knopf. Do we have a second?
Second, Commissioner Ross.
Commissioner Ross seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is then open relative to the MITA bonds for Red River Biorefinery. Ms. Nelson, is there a representative from that company there?
They are on the call, on the Zoom call.
Yes, this
Dave?
is Keshav Rajpal from the company, and we also have bond counsel on.
Thank you.
Nate Stanger from Ballard Spar is on as bond counsel.
And I think this has been going around here for several months, but can you proceed to advise us as to your position and where we're at on it at the present time?
Are you referring to the process here with the county?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let Nate speak to the process, but essentially what we're asking for is an allocation for bonds from the county.
Yes, we are drafting the bond documents for the transaction, and we are requesting the allocation from the county at this time.
And what is your request? What allocation?
So we are requesting a total of, and apologies, let me just pull up the total. So we are requesting a total of 112,500 million, and 73,500 of which are going to refinance prior issuance. So the new bonds under the transaction would be in the amount of 40 million.
Any comments from the commission?
This is Dave. I got a question.
Go
The resolution that Ms. Nelson sent out is different from that in that it looks like the resolution we were asked to approve would be to approve the issuance of an amount not to exceed 120 million of Series 2020 bonds and so on, with no financial risk to the county. Should we be having a different number in the resolution if we move to pass that?
The company was actually requesting 120 million, and right now, what we have within our budget is 112, which is what Mr. Stringer was referring to. The reason there's a little bit of a difference there is that as we go out to the market, there may be some changes. We may have to look for a little bit more capital. So we made it 120 million to leave us some room.
All right, this would be a not to exceed $120 million resolution then.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Keith.
Thank you. I visited with Ms. Nelson last week. She asked me to get a hold of Carleen Fine, who is the Executive Director and Secretary of the North Dakota Industrial Commission. And they really do possess the volume cap for this allocation. I visited with her with respect to 2 questions. Number one, well, 3 actually. Number one, the state has adequate volume cap. And they are not concerned about this issuance in terms of under the state's authority. And number 2, that they had been communicating with the Red River Biorefineries Council, and she was comfortable with what they were proposing. And she affirmed, as I believe that you all know, that there is no financial risk to the county, that you authorize it under the volume cap and they go to the market, and it's the viability of the project and the security they can provide, which ultimately garners the debt. So I just wanted to report on that conversation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Lund. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we will need to have a motion to close the public hearing before we make a motion to approve a resolution if the commission so chooses.
Okay, thank you.
I move we close the public hearing and go back to the regular commission meeting.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Knopf. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing is closed on the MITA bonds for Red River Biorefinery, and we proceed back to our general meeting. Okay, next I'm assuming Ms. Nelson, is we need a motion from one of the commissioners to approve the issuance of the MITA bonds.
Correct.
And I would do that, but you've told me I can't, so.
That's right. I did give a sample of what we've used in the past. Did you see that?
I have a cut sample in my hand, so I can make the motion. Can I just refer to that, or should I read it in the record anyway?
Why don't you read it?
Okay. I move that we approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of an amount not to exceed $120 million revenue bonds for the Red River Biorefinery Project Series 2020. It appears that the impact and effect of the issue upon existing industry and business will not result in an unfair advantage for the proposed project to the substantial detriment of existing enterprises. Grand Forks County assumes no financial responsibility. The bonds will be subject to an administration fee of 1% of the total issuance with a maximum of $10,000.
Excellent, thank you. Is there a second to Mr. Commissioner Engen's motion?
Commissioner Rost, I would second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Rost. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion relative to the MITA bonds for Red River Biorefinery signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying aye. Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Mr. Lund.
Thank you. Likewise.
You can stay, Keith.
Yeah, just stick around.
You hardly have any meetings, so why not stay?
I'm
Later.
never on Zoom.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
to see everyone.
Well, we'll hear from you in the future, Mr. Lund.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I look
Okay.
forward to it.
You bet. Okay, and so are we done with Red River Biorefinery then, Ms. Nelson?
Mr. Chair, we are.
Thank you. We can then move on to public health. Who is available from public health for us today?
Good evening, Commissioner Falk and members of the commission. This is Debbie Swanson from Grand Forks Public Health Department. And with me today is Michael Dulitz from our data and analytics team, and he's going to provide an update on data and status of our vaccinations. But I did want to just give you two brief updates before Michael shares his screen or the document is shared, whichever way you prefer. I wanted to let you know that we have had success with hiring 2 school nurses for the county schools, so we're really excited about that
Good.
progress. Took longer than we anticipated, but we're very excited about having 2 nurses join our team to help us with COVID response and school nursing duties in our 4 county schools that we'll be covering. And then also to let you know that as we work our way through vaccinations beyond the centralized location of the Alara Center, and when we move into other tiers, we do anticipate that we'll be doing more vaccinations out in the rural communities in Grand Forks County. Currently, we're relying upon our partners there in Spectra Health, Northwood Deaconess, Good Samaritan, to conduct some of that vaccination effort right now in the priority groups. But as we expand, we anticipate having a public health presence out in the county as well. So I will turn it over to Michael, who always has really good information on where we're at in COVID-19 and has a good presentation for you this afternoon.
Ms. Swanson, before you leave us, I have a question.
Of course.
You know, I'm trying to be an optimist, and if the amount of vaccine would increase substantially, whether from new vaccine or increased production, would you be able to push all of that through the Alara Center?
Commissioner Falk and members of the commission, when we plan for pandemic flu, what we call point of dispensing, we did plan for a very large vaccination effort with 1 dose of vaccine using the Alara Center over a period of like 3 days to do the entire population of Grand Forks County of 70,000 people, including children. What we have is a very different situation with vaccine rolling out in smaller increments, and we do not have vaccine for children yet, and we have second doses. So we have quite a different situation than we had anticipated, which is requiring this staged effort. But should there be a large rollout of vaccine, we would probably start with large events, but we would recognize that it takes a lot of outreach to find people where they can access vaccine. And we want to make sure it's very equitable to people with transportation barriers or language barriers or the inability because of a health condition to get to a central location. And so we would still probably plan to do some outreach in the county, even if we did have a large quantity of vaccine at one time, just to make sure that we're reaching all corners of Grand Forks County.
Thank you. That answers that. Does anyone have any other questions for Ms. Swanson before we move on? Hearing none, then we could hear from Mr. Dulitz.
Chair Falk and members of the commission, I'm going to share my screen before I get started. My name is Michael Dulitz. I'm the Opioid Response Project Coordinator at Grand Forks Public Health, and then I'm pinch hitting doing a variety of COVID-related duties. I'm going to provide a little bit of update on where we're at with our vaccination efforts, as well as with COVID in general in Grand Forks County. So overall, the health officer's dashboard is showing a lot of really good progress right now. So our score is at a 0.8 right now, which means that we're just on the line between yellow and green. Right now we aren't at green because of the number of new cases per 100,000. We need that to get down into the yellow. Right now it's in the orange. And it is a factor that weighs very highly with us, and I will go into that a little bit more later, but just bear in mind that we do weigh that at about 40% of our score, and so that is why we are staying in the yellow. Looking at our vaccination efforts, there's lots of numbers thrown around about what constitutes herd immunity, for COVID-19. I've heard numbers as low as 50% of the population being vaccinated, having vaccination immunity through vaccination, all the way up to 80% being required. So, based off of a paper that we, that we sourced, we're putting our goal for presumptive, keyword presumptive herd immunity at 60% vaccine coverage. So 60% of the population receiving 2-dose vaccine coverage, or the vaccine coverage as recommended by the manufacturer. So right now we are making a fair amount of progress. 10% of the county has received their first dose of vaccine, and 4.6% of the county has received their full 2-dose vaccine series. We've made a lot of progress in the past couple of weeks in getting that first dose out to people, particularly in the, in the 70 and 80%, or 70 and 80 age groups, 80 plus age groups. When we look at the vaccine eligible population, the vaccine can only be given to individuals who are 16 and older. And so that lowers down the amount of population who can get the vaccine in order to get us to that 60% coverage rate. So, that right now is at about 5.8%. We need that to be above 60% for us to receive, or to be at 60% for the whole population. Overall, we are making a lot of really good progress. When we compare that to Polk County across the river, Polk County has about 11% with their first dose and about 3% with 2-dose coverage. When we combine those two together into the, looking at the Grand Forks metropolitan statistical area, we are still running, around 10% with that first dose and 4% with 2-dose coverage. In our quest to 60% for that presumptive herd immunity, I see a lot of utility in kind of comparing Grand Forks County to our peer counties in the state of North Dakota. Overall, we are kind of neck and neck with Cass County in our 2-dose vaccine coverage rate. We're both at about 4.6%. We'll be doing a number of second doses this week, so hopefully we can, kind of stay ahead of Cass County as our biggest rival in vaccination. Speaking of rivalries in our vaccination, we are kind of trading off back and forth, between Cass County in the number of vaccines given per 100,000 population. So we were ahead towards the end of last week. Now Cass County pulled ahead of us. We are anticipating to give about roughly 2,000 plus doses, and then this week on both as a total between both our Wednesday and Saturday events. So we will make a significant amount of progress in the number of vaccine doses delivered. Grand Forks County, when compared to our peer counties in the state, we are second in the rate of people over the age of 80 who have been vaccinated. And we are second in the number of people in the 70 to 79 age group that have been vaccinated. We're second to Ward County, but we've also vaccinated more people in a variety of age groups in the state. We are beating the, we're running close to the state average now with the 70 to 79 age group, and we're doing, we're beating the state average in that 80 plus age group. So shifting gears away from the, away from vaccination, we're making a lot of progress on vaccination, but the reason why we're vaccinating is because of the, prevalence of disease in the Grand Forks area. As you can see on the graph, since about, mid to late December, we've seen a significant flattening of the number of new cases that we've been seeing in Grand Forks County. So we've done a lot of really good work to flatten the curve. When we look at the predictions that we made, I made some pretty stark, some pretty stark predictions to the, to the commission a few months ago. So looking at where we, where our predictions were on 11/30, 12/7, 12/14, the middle of January, and now as of yesterday, we're making significant progress in slowing down the spread of COVID-19. So, I don't know if any of us would have predicted that this is where we'd be at the 1st of February, but fortunately we are here. So, there's a lot of effort that went into, mitigation efforts and, efforts to slow the spread. And we certainly have been seeing the progress of all of our work. One way that we can take a look at our progress is by looking at the estimated doubling time. There was a little bit of a concern at the beginning and middle of January that maybe our case counts were going up a little bit. And you can see that was borne out very quickly in, a slowing of our doubling time. So this number, the higher it is, the better, particularly over time. As our case counts get higher, the case doubling time needs to get higher to factor in that slowing of, or the slowing of the number of cases needed to avoid doubling the number of cases. So, for instance, right now we're at about 10,000 cases in the county compared to June, where we had significantly less. So that doubling time needed to slow down significantly. Otherwise, the numbers would end up looking, the impact would be significantly less. So, as I mentioned at the, on my first slide, I talked about how, we're still in yellow, even though, the governor has moved us to green on his dashboard, and we, aren't seeing a ton of cases in Grand Forks County. I wanted to provide a little bit of context to that and why we weigh new cases so much. So new cases provide, when we look at new cases, they are the reservoir of disease spread in the community. When we have cases in the community, we have, possibilities of spread. When we look at historically, when we look at the case curve, that you see in the dashboard every day, you see the outliers, and that kind of, draws the scale, incredibly high, because we hit almost 300 cases per 100,000 at one point. We forget that the original scale of that graph was supposed to be, based off of 25 cases per 100,000 being the tipping point into the red zone. So I readjusted that to look at the scale of where we're at. So this is the graph that you would have seen, if I would have presented to you in early August or late July. So just as a little bit of context, if we use those same glasses to look at where we're at right now, we're still very thoroughly in the orange zone with a good trend. So we really don't want to have a reservoir of cases, because you can see what's happened when we've had reservoirs of cases. In that orange range, we have seen, significant increases, particularly in that kind of gray area that we looked at. Again, providing some context to the outbreaks that we saw in September through November. In September through November, or late August through mid-December, we did see 59 of our 72 deaths in that time frame. So we did see the consequences of that significant rise in cases. Not only do we see the significant rise in the deaths in the community, we also saw a significant rise in the morbidity. So the amount of damage outside of death that it was potentially causing to the community. So we saw those increases in the number of hospitalizations, which fortunately, looking at this active hospitalization chart, we have fortunately reached a point where we had 0 active hospitalizations last week for one day. That number has since gone up to 5, but we have made a tremendous amount of progress in that area. And then comparing to other communities, we're all seeing a downward trend, but Grand Forks, again, we have had a much more marked decrease in the number of cases that are hospitalized. And then finally, to wrap up my presentation, I just wanted to provide context compared to the region. So in general, we're all seeing a relative decrease in the number of cases. South Dakota is still kind of leading the pack in the number of cases, but we've all seen major declines. Looking at hospitalizations, Manitoba still has a fair number of hospitalizations, whereas South Dakota has been coming down. North Dakota and Minnesota have been, relatively similar. So our bottom line, our strengths, we've had a high vaccination rate in Grand Forks County. We're making a ton of progress in that respect. We'll be moving into the 65 age group with 2 comorbidities this week. We reached 0 in our hospitalizations for the first time in months. Our incidence curve is flattening and our testing rate is remaining high. We still don't have enough vaccine. We still would love to see more vaccine so we can get more vaccine into arms and, eventually, kind of relax a lot of our efforts, even though we did receive an additional allocation this week. And then finally, looking at our opportunities and threats, we still have a full set of mitigation strategies, unlike some of our peer communities in the state who have, kind of given into political pressure to, relax some of those efforts. And, we are well on our way to, getting into green on our dashboard, as long as we can get under an average of 7 cases per day. And then finally, looking at our threats, we would love to see a lot more vaccine. The slower we get vaccine, the higher the chance we could have of a future outbreak. And there's been a relaxation overall in the state of the number of people following the guidelines, even though, we do have those requirements in place. I did provide Debbie Nelson the slides, so she will be able to add those to the minutes. And I include a ton of other measures on there if you want to check up to see, on any of the things that I previously reported on. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Dulitz?
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
Dave.
This is Commissioner Ross. I just have a quick question on 65 plus with no underlying conditions. When do you anticipate vaccinating those people?
I think I'll defer to Debbie on this one. She might have the list right in front of her.
Thank you, Commissioner Ross. I think our best guess is sometime in March. Right now, we're still on the tier that's 65 to 74 with 2 or more underlying health conditions. And then we'll move to congregate settings. And then at some point, we'll move to everyone 65 and over. So I do anticipate we're anticipating doing the congregate settings the first week in March. So I would anticipate we'll be moving on. I think it's important to keep in mind, though, that things can change quickly depending upon allocations. We did just learn that there's going to be a pharmacy allocation for the state of North Dakota on top of what we're currently getting. And as vaccines roll out slightly differently among all of the counties, things can change, and it may be slightly different in one jurisdiction versus another. But we're looking at probably sometime in the month of March is my best guess at this point.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Dave.
Yes.
Michael, are all healthcare workers and all long-term care residents who are able to be vaccinated, have they been vaccinated?
Commissioner Engen, the opportunities have been provided to all long-term care residents and all healthcare workers in the Grand Forks area. I know overall in the state of North Dakota, the percent of long-term care workers that have been vaccinated has been relatively low, as in below 50%. But I know in Grand Forks with like Valley Senior Living, we've had a lot better success with vaccine uptake. Looking at long-term care residents, the number of residents taking the vaccine, at least based off of the numbers that I've heard, has been pretty high, in the upwards of the 80 to 90% range. So there has been a lot of interest in those areas. And then, it has kind of moved on into, some of those other long-term care settings as well, and into the staff of, like assisted living facilities, things of that nature.
One follow-up, are any significant number of healthcare workers refusing the vaccine?
Commissioner Engen, members of the commission, we are, when we look at the state as a whole, there are a lot of groups, particularly those long-term care groups, that are having a lot harder time with vaccine uptake. In general, every indication that I've gotten in the Grand Forks area, it's been relatively, the uptake has been relatively good, but I don't have necessarily as good a data from rural Grand Forks County.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Any other information from Ms. Swanson at all?
No, sir, I do not have any additional updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll move on to the Border Township Association Group.
Mr. Chairman, I think that is going to be Mr. Axbig from the Grand Forks County Water Board.
Is Mr. Axbig available?
See him on. You're muted, Mr. Axbig, in case you are.
Yes.
Trying to address.
He can tell who uses the laptop the most.
Good to see you, Rich. What
Yes.
can you tell us today?
Well, I need some help from Nick West and Kari Gels. There was a full page news article on BTAG on the 27th of January, which pretty much explained the project and as far as they've been able to move ahead to date. And so the next line of item is to develop some source of funding is kind of where they are right now. Again, this is a group that's working on the Red River, which is it's a very large river. And so as far as water boards go, we have no jurisdiction, on the Red River. And also this project has a lot to do with bridges, railroad crossings, railroad bridges, and even a bridge up north on Highway 15 east of Grafton is all part of this project. I did visit a little bit with the Walsh County Water Board yesterday, and seems like the issue for them is the highway, state highway on both sides of the river in terms of moving ahead with a extensive project in terms of the size of the bridges. Actually, in the work plan, which is getting to be a little dated now, it calls for 2 new bridges, one on the Red River, one on the Murray, and then a raising of County Road, their State Highway 54, I think we call it. And so the group is making an effort to get their story out by the use of a video, which was presented at our water board meeting 2 weeks ago, or maybe it's a month ago, but I also saw it was presented to the commissioner on a video prepared by Wilseth engineering firm that had been contacted or contracted by the Border Township group. Carrie and Nick, you can chip in anytime you want. I guess the situation we are now is that they're looking for someone from Grand Forks County to serve as some type of a group to move this project ahead. Mainly more into the financial part of it. That was their request from us at the water board meeting. So it is a project that really involves bridges, railroad bridge, state highway bridge, and then also straightening of the Red River itself with some township roads that are no longer used, possibly lowering those. And it kind of stops at the County Road 17 or 317 east of Grafton. And it basically starts about 2 miles south of Oslo. And so we have a portion of one township, a couple miles of one township that is affected by the backup waters that when they run into the city of Oslo. I myself haven't been to a BTAG meeting recently, other than what they presented to the water board. And I don't know if Kari has been to any other, or Nick. I'm not sure if they've had any at this very moment. I think the word for the winter was to get the word out that they are trying to form some way to fund this expensive improvement that would benefit some of the cropland in and around Oslo, plus mostly the city. Any comments, Nick?
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Mr. Axvig, I guess I wasn't prepared to speak on this today, but generally speaking, I support the BTAG group and their initiative. It's a good initiative, and it's a good project. It I don't know where to start. It's such a massive project.
Yes.
I don't know where you would start with funding and how you'd chip away at it. And, you start talking about a railroad bridge and a new raising State 54 and a new bridge from Oslo on State 54. And I forget the highway in Minnesota side, but you got to have the DOT involved. They got to be on board with it. And that's, it's just such a massive undertaking. I think step one is if we could just join that group, that BTAG group, so that way if there ever was funding available, it's got an intermediary government agency that it could flow through. That is step one, and that doesn't cost us any money to my knowledge. But you could tell lawmakers that, hey, we got a mechanism here, and we got 3 counties on board and all these townships and groups, and we're ready to rock. We just need some funds. And if I don't know if that's been done or not, but yeah, I guess that's my comments for now.
Somebody just spoke, please.
Kari.
That was me, Commissioner Falk. This is Kari.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Kari.
I agree with Nick. It is a good project. They've got their skin in the game. They paid for the study. However, because of the scope of this project, it's going to be much like the water treatment plant was here in town. It is absolutely going to need infrastructure money support from the state of North Dakota and the state of Minnesota. Now, I don't know if this group is prepared to approach the legislatures. But it isn't something that can be carried by the counties. We're talking millions of dollars. So I think Nick is right. I think and that we need to attend their meetings and try to get our heads wrapped around how they intend to do this. To Rich's comment, no, I have not been to any of their meetings. I did attend one Zoom meeting where they presented their video and their mission and their vision to a group of emergency managers. But again, it's so far out of reach. Nobody's got the money to fund this. It's got to come from state and federal governments. With the railroad involved, that's a private entity. So I think Nick is right. I think they're looking for some sort of a JPA between the counties, the states, whoever. But we don't have enough information right now. So to maybe become a part of that group and try to learn, that's one thing. But to Mr. Axvig's point, if they're looking for funding, we would have nothing that could even make a dent in what it's going to cost to get this project done. So that's my 2 cents from what I've learned from listening to them.
But I tend to agree with you, Kari, and that one of the problems is that it's the very northern part of our county, so a huge part of our population wouldn't even be involved in this, so they'd be somewhat skeptical of how involved Grand Forks County should get financially. But I think it's beyond any county, township, city, whatever, to finance this. I agree with Kari and Rich and Nick. This has to go to the federal and state governments to finance. It seems to me, and I'll throw it out to the commission, that we should see if one of our number, whether it's, I'm thinking maybe either Mr. West or Ms. Geltz would be willing to sit in on the BTAG meetings for at least a few months to see what's going on, and we could proceed from there. And I don't have any problem supporting them. That's fine. But any other comments from our commissioners?
This is Rich Axvig again, commissioners. They were successful in applying for funding from the State Water Commission and from the city of Minnesota, or the state of Minnesota, for the development of the plan. So that part of this whole process, they do have a plan, and it calls for substantial bridge construction, which brings in North Dakota DOT. And I am not knowledgeable of how much contact they've had with our DOT person in Grand Forks or with the state legislature. I think that is their ultimate goal, and how they get there, I think, is why they're asking for a joint powers group, and are requesting a member from Walsh County and Grand Forks County just to be on that joint powers board. I would guess that that's the direction they will go to proceed with the funding issues.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Ford. From the last meeting, Mr. Axvig is right. The BTAG was asking the commission during the last meeting, basically for a representative from the county to sit in on their BTAG meetings and show some support, so that when they start going into fundraising and approaching the states and the feds, that the area county commissions and county entities were in support. So I think at this point they're asking for some representation and participation, but they weren't asking for any kind of funding commitment at this time.
Right. That's right. Basically, a member to the joint powers, what they were at. Yeah, right. So Nick or Kari, don't both speak up.
I volunteer Nick.
Well done.
Well, then we'll match Walsh County, because I think Walsh County's highway department personnel person is going to be Walsh County's rep. And I'm perfectly happy with that, if that's the way it would work for Nick. You know, and if there's some reason you can't be there, you know, you gotta let us know, Nick.
Yeah, and my question is, Mr. West, whether that would work for you for a few months till we see how this goes, and if it's not working out for you, we could look to find someone else. I think we just need to put our feet in the water, so to speak, for a few months and see what happens.
Both feet. Both feet. Nick.
Well, Nick's got big feet, so that'd work.
I'm actually quite small for my height, but
Yeah.
You're not jumping in, Nick. If you don't want to, you just tell us.
well, on record,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, yeah, I can do that.
Maybe we'll help you.
Nick, if you want, let me know and I'll go with. I don't have a problem doing that.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Commissioner Knopf. I'd be happy to do it.
Well, let's leave it at that, and you can report back as to what they want from us, and we'll see if we can accommodate them. Is that fair for the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Would this mean that we are officially joining that joint powers group? Is that what that means?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we can officially join anything until our state's attorney has actually weighed in and there's an actual formal agreement that a chair signs. That's just my opinion.
Let's say this, Nick, you can talk to them about it and maybe they can send the proposal back to us. And I think we'd be interested in joining, but we need to see what it entails. How's that?
Sounds very reasonable.
Very reasonable. Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that and we'll move on. Thank you, folks, for appearing today. And then I guess, Nick, you're still on as highway. Are you next highway engineer?
Richie Hansen is, isn't he? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Yep. Nick is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So part of, let me get my information right here. The COVID relief funds have filtered through the state DOT and they are sharing them with the 12 major cities and 53 counties. They're distributing them based on previously established formulas for highway distribution funds throughout the state. As such, we have been gifted $168,173.90. So that is basically federal aid money. Unless we are Title VI compliant, which we are not, then we need to go through another federal agency. So basically this is treated like federal aid money. And my proposition to the board would be is we have a 2022 paving job that we're trying to do and scheduling for and trying to budget for. And we were planning on advancing some federal aid to do that job already anyway. So if we would, I would propose we take this money and apply it toward that paving job, and therefore it would just reduce our advancement of federal aid money by this $168,000 amount. $168,000 is just a little over 1 mile of pavement, what we're budgeting right now, assuming oil prices stay down. It's not enough to do a standalone project. can't really just go out and replace a culvert here or there. It's not enough to do a bridge. So I would just absorb it into our paving job if the board would so choose to do. So that is my proposal to the board.
What are the wishes of the commissioners?
I have a question. This is Dave. You'd be applying the whole 168,000 to the 2022 project?
Correct.
And how much of that project would that cover?
Yeah, just a little over a mile. So it'd be.
Wow. Getting expensive.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. 1 second. Gosh, I just had it up here. We are proposing to do a total project. Yeah, the total construction paving project is, well, okay, the total project is, shoot, let me get my numbers right here. Tell you something wrong. Well, the federal aid portion is 1.7 million. So this would be about 10% of that. Usually in a given year, we get about somewhere about $450,000 to $500,000 of federal aid per year. So yeah, it's a few months worth of federal aid money, really. I hate to say it, it's kind of dropping the bucket, really. If they would add a zero, then we'd be talking about something significant and asking for another job. But the best thing to do, I think, is just to roll it into the project. So,
How many miles do you intend to do in 2022?
we have 12 miles of federal aid and 7.5 miles of non-federal aid. So 19 miles, 19, 20. Yeah, the total paving, if we include the non-federal aid, that's about 983,000 plus 1.7, you're at 2.6 million total paving. So it just get absorbed into that. What it would do is just lessen the amount we would advance. Yeah.
And there isn't another project, a separate project where this would make a big difference? Or I guess it's not enough to make a big difference on anything, even a small bridge.
Yeah, we can't use it wherever we want because it's federal aid. It has to be used on our federal aid routes. So
Okay.
it'd be, we can't do a township bridge. We can't we can't spend it on a county road that's not federal aid. Most of our paved roads are federal aid. So you're looking at, well, typically pavement is where we spend our federal aid money. Yeah. So that's how the roads were originally paved, and that's traditionally how we've kept them up. Yeah, unless we are Title VI compliant, then we could spend it on just about anything the highway department would do, but we are not. So therefore, we're subject to what the DOT would process through. And since we already have a project planned, it may as well just absorb into that.
You need a motion? Because I guess this makes sense to me under the circumstances.
Yeah, let's have a motion to transfer the funds into the federal aid highway project that's for 2022.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of Nick's request to do that.
And I will second that motion.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. You can go ahead with the money, Mr. West.
Thank you very much. That is all I have.
Nick, I've got a question. And this, I'll just kind of catch you off guard with this, but I was thinking about, we're approved doing some remodeling on your storage shed out west. And we have a lot of those sheds in the county, which is problematic. But is there any thought, or have you ever considered co-locating one where you could move 3 units into one? And then, I mean, it might be cost effective that we would only have one shed for 3 units and they could just spider out to their areas.
That Gerald and I have very briefly discussed that topic. Right now we have a motor grader in each town, really. And they were put there to provide service to each area of the county. So that way each location, each area, region of the county feels like they have service. The trouble with that is politically, that would be tough to tell the community that's losing a shed. And then thus you'd lose, well, you would lose some efficiencies per day with a motor grader having to travel longer distances before they'd even put the blade down. So hypothetically, if we took and centralized, say Niagara goes to Larimore, then, he'd have to drive the distance from Larimore to Niagara each day, which is 10, 15 miles every day before he'd start work. Just rough figuring,
But yeah, and I understand that, Nick, and I appreciate that. I just threw it out as some thought that maybe we could, spend less money and remodel 3 or 4 sheds into really nice sheds and go from there instead of maintaining 7 or 8 sheds out there right now. So
yeah,
and some of them aren't in very good shape. I mean, the one at Niagara that we're talking about, that's virtually a tear down.
Yeah, it is. The other part of it is we'd only be able to we can get 2 pieces of equipment in those sheds. And right now, a lot of those sheds, we do that already. So like Niagara has a motor grader and a tractor and blower ready to go right now. And it's full. That's all you get. You get 2 pieces in there and you're full. Northwood's the same. Larimore has a plow truck and a motor grader. That one's already fixed up. Gilby gets the same thing. Gets a plow truck and a motor grader. Inkster has a motor grader and a plow truck. Manville already has 2 blades. Thompson, we can get 4 pieces in there. That's brand new. We built that one purposefully. That has 2 motor graders all the time. And sometimes we have a plow truck, and sometimes we have a plow truck and a snow blower there. That would leave, well, Emerado already has 2. That's full, 2 motor graders. And Holmes we rent.
Well, let me interrupt you, Nick. Let's forget I ever asked that. So.
Yeah. If anything, we should build them all bigger like Thompson.
Well, that's kind of when I first thought about this, I thought about we could build maybe 4 large sheds, or when we, not necessarily all in one year, but if we remodel one of these sheds, we could make it larger if it could serve 2 districts or whatever, rather than the way we're doing it. But it doesn't sound like that's going to work, so we'll move on.
And plus, if whatever community we take it out of, I really truly feel they would feel like they're getting shorted by the county. And there's already a stigma of we spend all of our money on the eastern half, and the western half gets the shaft. So, I hate to say it like that, but that's putting it bluntly. And I heard it last night. I went to the city council meeting in Niagara last night. The blade operator and I did, and we had some discussion about operations of blading and snow removal in the city, because we have a new operator out there and he's learning. So we went to the meeting and talked to them. It was a good meeting, but after the meeting, one of the guys walked out and said, "Well, yeah, you spend all your money around Grand Forks, and we don't see any service." And I counter back with each town's got a blade, every town's got a blade and they each get serviced about the same, and each blade has about the same number of miles or pretty close. Granted, the ones around Grand Forks have a little less miles, but way more traffic. So
That's the
yeah,
problem in the eastern half, all the traffic funnels into Grand Forks, so you have to cover those roads a little more.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yeah,
Nick, in the rural areas, most of the township roads are cleared of snow with the motor graders, aren't they, rather than the plow trucks?
Oh, it's 50-50. Well, I don't know about
Okay.
50-50, but we have 12 motor graders and 7 plow trucks.
Yeah.
And they each take their 100 miles or 80 miles or whatever it is and go. So
Well, if they had to travel too far during snow times, it would be kind of difficult, I think. And it also sounds, Nick, from hearing you talk, that maybe Commissioner Peach and I, being in the western half, have to get a little more on top of things here. Harass the highway department some more. So we'll work on that.
yeah, we need more money.
I think, Nick, I think they're the ones spreading those rumors out there, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for enlightening us on that.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to, I think Bridgie Hansen is next from juvenile detention.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
go
all
ahead.
right. All right. I just wanted to make sure. I'm here today, Chairman Falk and members of the commission, as I got bids that came back for the renovation of the unit that's below the detention center. And we broke the construction phase down into phase 1 and phase 2 because attendant care effectively will shut down in Grand Forks effective February 28th. So we've got 26 days in which to do something. Phase 1 would, be renovating the entrance area that we presently use for our COVID entrance for admittance of juveniles into detention. And that area right now is just a polyed area with, a wood frame that we would incorporate with walls and make a general intake area for all law enforcement to bring juveniles into custody. At that location, it would be determined if the kids would go into the attendant care site or upstairs to juvenile. And at this time, there is legislation going in for House Bill 1091 that will be bringing shelter care kids into these attendant care sites to be held longer than the normal 96 hours. So phase 2 would incorporate going into the second area that's adjoining this room and making 3 bedrooms that would allow attendant care kids and shelter kids, care kids to use this area as they might be held up to 7 days. Also in phase 1, there would be a completion of a handicapped area because a handicapped bathroom, which would be ADA, all the ADA requirements that would be necessary to include a toilet, a couple showers, and the sink. So that area would be off the front or the intake area, accessible, for the attendant care group. The bids came in. There were 3 bids, and I did forward those to you, so I know that you have them. The high bidder came in at, let me think about this. The high bidder on phase 1 came in at 62,500, and that was Executive Properties. Sones Construction came in at 59,180, and Craft Masters Construction came in at 52,910, and that was for phase 1. We do need to get phase 1 done immediately within the next 26-day period. Otherwise, we're going to have kids that we won't be able to accommodate or help the law enforcement agencies to get them off the streets and to provide protection for them. Going into the attendant care remodel for phase 2, Executive Properties came in with a bid of 22,000. Soane Construction came in with a bid of 18,580, and Craft Masters came in with a bid of 16,411. So that puts us over the 50,000 mark. And the totals to complete for both phase 1 and phase 2, if we get them done at the same time, The low bidder would be Craft Masters Construction at 69,321. So today, we either need to make a decision if we go forward or what you choose to do, because we are over what was budgeted 2 weeks ago at the last commission meeting.
And I think, Ms. Hanson, we talked earlier, you are getting some carpet donated as part of this project. And
Carpet, yeah, we do have carpeting that was donated. We voted, came in with the lowest price on the carpeting, and Association of Counties will cover the cost of carpeting. And we voted, did pay for all the carpeting of phase 2 in the bedrooms. So that was a donation. The Association of Counties will pay for the entrance door, which attendant care is a non-secure facility. So if kids choose to get up and leave in the middle of the night or within that 96-hour period, they have to be able to get out the door. And because we use the same entrance, we have to have an exit button that they can access to get out and leave. And that, the attendant care site or the North Dakota Association of Counties will pay for that as well. And then we do have a secure door that leads into the dead center of the old jail. And that door is an electronic door that if it's opened, it activates our upstairs panel. So that was another cost that Accurate Controls would have to come in to, dislocate that door and take it off our panel so it's not triggering any of our, control panels. So those were additional costs. The other thing too is the heating, heating has to go into those areas to accommodate for when the building gets below 16 below. So we had to get bids for special heating and going through that concrete wall to accommodate into the bathrooms that are better located for that attendant, for the ADA requirements was put us over a little bit. So that's where we are at. And the city did come in, Chris Prue did do a building plan that he incorporated the drawing that I did send to you. That was done so we could get the phases going. And so this was already brought to the city and the city has approved this. It's just no, license has been purchased until we get clarification from the commission. So it's ready to go if that's what you choose.
And the other matter, and I feel it incumbent on me to bring up, so, and maybe not all the commissioners are aware, but Craft Masters Construction is actually owned by Ms. Hanson's, is it husband and son? Or both?
Yeah, yes, it is. It is.
Husband and son. Glenn Hanson was nice enough to draw up the project on short notice. And I do know, in the interest of fairness, I received the Craft Masters bid before any of the other 2 bids were in. In fact, I asked then that we get more bids.
Yep.
So there wasn't an unfair advantage for them knowing what the other bids were. They actually had their bid in first. But I thought it was incumbent to bring this matter before the commission because we are talking, I think we have to do both phases. And we are talking about 69,000, anywhere from 69 to 84,000, depending on which bid we would take to do this project. And time is really of the essence. We have, as she said, we've got, 26 days to get that first phase done. So they really almost have to get started this week if they're going to have a chance to get that done.
Chairman Falk,
Yes.
I just have a question that I need for you to make clear in my mind, but with the old jail, if that building comes down, does juvenile detention come out of there? And would this also come out of there? I mean, are we putting money into a facility that we know is going to be torn down?
At some point, the answer is yes, we are. And that was initially, Ms. Hanson and I talked about it because actually we believe it will save money over a period of years by doing this. It'll be more cost effective than what we were paying Lutheran Social Services, but we decided to stay with them in our discussions a couple of years ago because at some point we thought we might be out of that building, but now it's no longer an alternative. So really, whether it's costing us more or we're putting money into a building we may eventually abandon, there isn't really much we can do about that right now.
So would we be going with kind of bare bones minimum, I mean, you know, livable, obviously, but.
Yeah, this is pretty bare
yeah.
bones. It's carpet, providing a shower and toilet and sink and bunk beds and carpeting and the door. And one of the problems in there is we have to put in heating and air conditioning. And some of the bid on all the bids, the subcontractors, the same bid was used for the subs that we already received. And so I think, Bridget, you can correct me, but it's like $9,000 or $10,000 just to put heating and air into that area.
It is. It's over that. What was costly was going through that wall to accommodate to the bathroom that's closest to the entrance area for access for the ADA. But it's doable, and it's, you know, Bill has done a really good job. He's already cleared out the bunks. It's, you know, reconditioning that floor, putting the carpeting down. The walls all have to be, you know, patched and painted, and the units that will go in are run on a remote control. So our intake area, especially, you know, for juvenile detention, is we're sitting in a polyed room that's, you know, with 2x4s holding it up. Thank God that Bill did that for us, because we do our COVID screenings there before we bring them into the upstairs area. So this will, you know, also facilitate an intake area that we've never had before that can be utilized by all the agencies for intake. And it also creates a little waiting area so that when we have kids that are brought in, you know, we've had 5 kids brought in where 2 will go to the attendant care site and 3 will go upstairs up into juvenile, but it will allow privacy for those kids so that they aren't hearing the questions that we ask on intake of the other kids that are going through the process. Because we ask pertinent questions like, you know, have you had any drugs or alcohol in the past 24 hours? Or do you have any abnormal bleeding? And, you know, kids don't want to, you know, commit to that or answer those questions when they've got their peers and their cohorts in crime right standing next to them. So this entrance area really does accommodate a situation that because of COVID, you know, we were usually bringing our kids up into the second floor area, and now we'll have a central location, you know, for all law enforcement here, you know, to come in and to utilize that space that we didn't have before. And it truly is necessary.
Well, and some of the cost, Bridget and I were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
right now, they aren't taking any kids that fall under ADA requirements. But because we're doing the construction, we have to follow those guidelines. So that's,
Yeah.
we just
The
have
cities-
to absorb those costs. And the other thing is, I don't, right now at where we're at as far as any kind of a construction of a new facility or whatever is probably at least 4 years down the road. So I think we'll be close to breaking even on this project if we use it for 4 years, and we really don't have any other choice. So.
Yeah.
So
And there-
will the state be contributing anything to this? I mean, they're taking
So,
Lutheran
yeah.
Social Services under their umbrella, and attendant
I
care is
didn't-
part of that.
Yeah, I did include the budgets that Lutheran Social Services had, you know, before, because their budget was over $45,000. And YouthWorks will come in and they will run the program, which has 13 employees and a supervisor, and they will run that program through and I did include those budgets with us. They did send me just a tentative budget because I said, what will it still cost the county under some of the, you know, the guidelines that they have to run this? You know, they needed tech support and office supplies. And I talked to Debbie about this too, because their budget came in at $34,940. And looking at some of the things that they had, they weren't sure about their insurance costs because attendant care had $123 or $143 for insurance, where, you know, YouthWorks had $1,380. But you know, to run a whole program like the attendant care site that offers that shelter care area for $34,000 is pretty minimal. Their counts went up. They had over 30, I believe 30 additional intakes this year, and they saved us in the detention center because these kids that can't go home sometimes get court ordered to be held in detention. which is unfortunate because there aren't places for them. This will take our load off and allow kids that shouldn't be placed in detention to stay longer in a shelter care area where those bedrooms are, you know, for up to 7 days, and help social services find placement for kids that, you know, need homes. So it's necessary. And I think with what's happening with COVID and Lutheran Social Services, you know, folding, we're seeing more kids, and we already are seeing more situations happening where there's more domestic violence and more kids being brought in because of it. Unfortunate as it is.
So that was my other question. All of those children do fall under our umbrella as a county to care for.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
couldn't hear you.
I must have, I'm sorry, they do. They're still our responsibility.
So
yes.
with Youth Works coming in, their staff, they won't be considered, who, the state will pay them?
The state pays for the feds pay under the Association of Counties. They have a program that pays their wages. I mean, pays the officers that are those 13 employees, they pay their wages. We have offset that by, in the past couple of years, because Janelle had come before the commission before asking for a market rate adjustment when their entrance level officers who are on call were paid $12 an hour. And the county offset that by adding another $1 to that, their hourly wages. Is that right? How you understand it, Debbie?
That is correct.
That's correct. So we offset that by, you know, because they couldn't find people to, you know, to come in at $12 an hour on call. So they do have a good staff that are trained, and they have a facility person that's there to handle their, you know, their scheduling. If somebody doesn't show up for work, that person has to come in, and they've got situations, you know, that, you know, if we took that on in detention and had our staff cover it, it would cost us more because we'd have to split those shifts and add more officers. Our officers earn more than that. And what would happen is, you know, if we worked attendant care, we can't work juvenile detention. It would have to be one or the other. So it would be kind of a scheduling nightmare. And for Youth Works to come in and provide, you know, take over that program and take on that responsibility, it's a major task.
So
And
my question is the bottom line, so to speak. If we, and I don't see how we have any other choice than to go ahead with this project, but let's say we go ahead with this project, we pay for the remodeling and we open up like we think. What is our out-of-pocket per year going to be to run the project then, approximately?
about 34,000.
34 a year instead of.
Maybe less. They're not sure. They're not sure on a couple of the, you know, they had some technology questions about their computers, and it might be less, but they put their budget at 34.9. When I spoke with Melanie Heitkamp today, she said, you know, these are kind of tentative, and she said we upped the hourly rate because of the influx of kids coming into the attendant care site. She said, but it might be lower. So, you know, that might be lower. And I thought at least if we looked at it for a year and you know, tried to see how many are coming in and how many aren't coming in, you know, I thought about the possibility of juvenile detention staff overseeing that area too, but it's something that's new, and there's 13, 14 people that have jobs coming in a program where they need their jobs, and it's working right now. And we've got, you know, crazy things happening in detention right now too with our staff and keeping everybody, you know, working and everything running. So
what is our contract right now with Lutheran Social Services for the attendant care? What?
$45.12 a year.
So our contract is 45, and you're saying the budget is going to be
35.
35, yeah.
And Tom,
So
you're
what-
thinking 4 years down the road yet before we get a building?
Yeah, you know, and so we're saving 10,000 a year, but there's no way this is going to work out as a money-making proposition for us. That's just the way it is. So it's a service.
Oh, and
that-
I understand that and I'm okay with it. It's just that I was just concerned about investing the money to remodel, do all of this if in, not too long a period of time, we are building a new building.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, but we stuck quite a bit of money into the juvenile detention center here a couple of years ago. And it's, we have to maintain it, even though we may be tearing it down at some point. We have to provide a healthy living environment for the children that we bring in there.
Absolutely.
So, okay, any other questions on this matter? Commissioner Ingen or Commissioner Ross?
No questions. I think we need to move on with it.
I don't think we have any choice, but I think we need to approve the bid to get phase one going right now.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. They need to start tomorrow, hopefully. All right. Does anyone have a motion?
This is Commissioner Ross. I would make a motion that we approve the low bid for phase 1 and 2. I believe it was like 69,000.
Yes.
391.
321,
How much?
321, 69.
321.
Yeah.
To go ahead with it.
Okay, we have a motion to go ahead with phase 1 and phase 2 at the same time, or, as quickly as we can get them done. Is there a second to that motion?
Second,
Second from Commissioner Ingen. Any other discussions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this will be taken from capital improvements. The $50,000 that you had approved at the last meeting would be part of this, but the remaining balance would also come from capital improvements.
Well, and we can discuss that out. Let's get the motion through and then discuss where we're going to take the money from.
Okay.
I have another suggestion I'll throw out there too. So we have a motion and a second at this time. No further comments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion passes. Craft Masters Construction, both projects for $69,321. Now, the question that occurred to me as I was thinking about this today is whether we should use some of the CARES money to pay for this. It seems like it would be a reasonable project to use that money for, and our capital improvements money still could then be used to improve some of the projects that we have on our list. Throwing it out there for discussion.
I think that would be a good idea.
And there's always the concern that we're going to run short of CARES money, but if we run short, in the end, it's all coming out of one pool, so to speak. So it's either out of capital improvements or out of our general fund or whatever. We'll have to take care of the other. But I'm kind of assuming, hopefully, we don't have a huge amount of demand on the CARES funding for at least for a period of time here.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter if you take it out of the CARES fund or you take it out of capital improvements. The motion that was made at the last meeting was to take it out of capital improvements, $50,000 now. So are you only going to take $19,321 out of the CARES Act or all of it?
if we can take all of it, maybe it makes sense that it might get another project funded that we had to put off for a while.
Really, our entrance was set up for, doing the COVID intakes and our screenings, so it does make sense. I just don't know what your balance is in the CARES Act, CARES funding.
We have a balance in our CARES Act that could be used, but we do also have a fund balance that could be used of capital improvement. So it really does not matter.
This is Commissioner Ross. I would make a motion that we take the $69,321 out of the CARES money.
We have a motion for Commissioner Ross to pay the project out of the CARES fund. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Engen. Do we have any more discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, and Ms. Hanson, you can move on with your project.
Okay, thank you kindly. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Next on our agenda, is Mr. Ford.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As you saw from my memo, as part of the sublease between the County of Grand Forks and Grand Sky Development Company, we're entitled to claim a little bit of participation rent on two either building leases or land leases. Being that there are no building leases out at Grand Sky, our only options are two land leases. So what I'm asking for tonight is for the commission to approve what I'm recommending as our two tenant subleases. And I'm recommending that the county claim participation rent on the Northrop Grumman Corporation sublease between Northrop Grumman and Grand Sky, and that we claim participation rent on the sublease between General Atomics and Grand Sky. It's not a considerable amount of money, as you saw from the two spreadsheets I included with my packet that Ms. Nelson shared with you, but it is some revenue. And I'll also just point out that these are estimates and they might be a little overinflated, as there are some numbers that go into the subleases between Grand Sky and tenants that include broker fees and et cetera that do not take part in what we claim. So my numbers could be a little overinflated. So just bear in mind their estimates. But I would ask that the commission just approve those two recommended subleases that we take participation rent on. And then if so, I'll just send Mr. Sawyer a letter notifying him of our two selections.
Any comments from the commission? We really don't have a lot of choice out there. Those are the two major subleases out there to pick, so.
There's no downside to doing it. I mean, it makes logical sense to pick those two. I guess I'll move approval of the request.
We have a motion to approve the request to take the subleases with General Atomics and Northrop Grumman by Commissioner Engen. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Knopf. Do we have any further discussion from anyone? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Anything else, Mr. Ford?
I've got a question or two for Mr. Ford.
Yeah, and I think you're muted, Tom.
Hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Engen.
How about the construction project in the COB? What's happening?
Yes, no, thanks for the question, Commissioner Engen. There was a pre-construction meeting that took place this morning that was hosted by ICON, and Mr. Grishevsky attended it at a mutual request. And unfortunately, there were no contractors that showed up for the pre-construction meeting. That being said, it is not a requirement that I'm aware of that any interested bidding party had to have attended. So just throwing that out there. But what I can tell you, Commissioner Engen, is that RFPs started running in the Grand Forks Herald on January 27th, and bids are due at 2 p.m. by February 18th, and that is also when we will open the bids. And then I can bring whatever bid is recommended to the board for approval. And in the interest of time, I think February 18th, but already after our second, depending on what the commission wants to do in the effort of time, we could always have a special meeting if that's the commission's prerogative to get that project started. But that's where it currently sits. Commissioner Engen is the pre-construction meeting happened today, and bids are due February 18th at 2 o'clock.
I heard most of that, but you're fading in and out on the sound.
I couldn't hear any of it.
Yeah,
Let's do this. Probably because I was moving my head back and forth, trying to get some verbal cues from Ms. Nelson. So basically, there was a pre-construction meeting this morning. Mr. Grzeszewski attended it with Icon. From what I was told, there were no contractors that attended this morning. RFPs have been running in the Grand Forks Herald since January 27, asking for solicitations for bids from interested contractors. And the bids are due from interested contractors by 2 p.m. on February 18th. We will also then open the bids at that time. February 18th is after the second commission meeting of February. So in the interest of time, if you as a commission want to get this thing rolling, I can reach out to Ms. Nelson and Chair Peach and just let her know that we have the bids and leave it up to the commission if you want to have a special meeting to review those bids, select a bid, and get the ball rolling. But that's currently where it's at, Commissioner Engen.
is there a reason they didn't get those RFPs out 4 or 5 months ago? I thought they were going to hustle and get it done in the fall.
Yeah, no, Commissioner Engen, that's a great question. We kept running into complication after complication it was like peeling an onion. The deeper you got into, the more it stung. And so the deeper we got into it, the more details emerged that needed to be readdressed. And eventually we got to a point to where it started pushing the public bidding threshold. Because what we thought was going to be a $60,000 project, as we got more into the weeds, the price kept going up and up and up. We wound up, we as Icon, I should say, did some solicitation of interested parties because we were under that threshold. And if you recall, I believe the cheapest bid came in at $130,000. But we also discovered we were going to have some issues with HVAC, which is going to then probably push it up even more. And so the commission wisely decided to publicly bid it. So that, Commissioner Engen, that is a very truncated answer to a long question. We just kept running into more issues that delayed it or drove the costs up, which then I had to bring back to the commission for input and approval, eventually causing the commission, again, rightfully so, to publicly bid it.
Okay, thank you.
What we thought was going to be a very cut and dry, very quick remodel got complicated the more we got into it.
All right.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Ford?
Mr. Chair, I have one more question for Mr. Ford, if anyone's going to ask him about the remodeling.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Ford, you and I have discussed, and we discussed at the last commission meeting, the fact that we're not going to be meeting in person probably for quite a while yet. And I, for one, find meetings to work a whole lot better if everyone shows up on Zoom so you can interact a little better with people rather than just making it sound like some people are on telephones. And I'm not going to be able to come back to the meetings because of other family issues until vaccinations have happened and that kind of thing. And being such a youngster, it's going to take me a while to get my shot. But it wouldn't be very difficult for a computer to be at each station, including the podium in the county commission room, would it? And then we could all hear and we could see each other better.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Engen, I mean, no, it wouldn't be difficult to have a laptop at each commission station and the stand. We would just work with Mr. Dahl and his staff. I think right now, in visiting with Mr. Dahl, he does have a few laptops remaining. So if you recall, you approved an extensive purchase for IT to go out and purchase about, I want to say 80 laptops when we pivoted to remote working. There are still some of those laptops remaining. Those laptops were purchased through CARES Act money. Mr. Dahl asked if I wanted him to install those in this room. It wasn't I think it was about 10 laptops. I under some of my discretion, I instructed Mr. Dahl to save those laptops in case we do have other employees that still need them. He has a few laptops that are old that maybe could suffice if you're just going to use them in this room to access Zoom. And another option is we can, again, look at some CARES Act money to purchase some very simple, small laptops for this room. The laptops that Mr. Dahl has that were purchased through CARES Act money, they're not top of the line, but they're not base model either. So they would be well utilized by staff who need to use them for remote working. And we could price out some very basic laptops. For example, the laptop I have right here on my desk in the commission room is nothing fancy. I use it literally for web Outlook and to run these Zoom meetings. So they're not overly pricey. So that's another option, Commissioner Ingen, is we could price some of those out, purchase them with CARES Act money, set them up here at each desk, and it would be pretty simple to get them up and running.
My question, Mr. Ford, is couldn't we just use our own personal computers that we've already got issued from the county? I'm getting a nod from Commissioner Knopf.
And same here.
That was my question. So it's like, we have them already. Why can't we use them?
Yeah,
If I come there, I'll bring my computer, no problem. We probably
That's what
only
we're
need
off.
one for the podium and just a couple.
Conversation. You asked, when does the county eventually open up? And phase 3 is still, phase 3 is that full opening again. And myself, along with the Restart Group and Public Health, have not entered into those phase 3 conversations quite yet. Some of the talk, and I have briefed Commissioner Ingen on this, some of the talk that I've had with Ms. Gels and Public Health, what does phase 3 look like? Is that how much of the vaccines have been disseminated throughout the county? Is there any herd immunity? Does the commission want the remodeling first floor south and second floor and third floor?
Can't hear you.
They're doing that. So I think it comes down to we need to have some more substance.
Still can't.
Can't hear you, Mr. Ford.
Can you use the audio on the little computer you're using?
Yeah.
I'm speaking into that. Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Maybe that computer that you're so proud of isn't quite up to standards, Mr. Ford.
It could be. I guess not to belabor the point, I think more discussions on a phase 3 full reopening need to be had, but I think those are also I'll have to reach out with each one of the U.S. commissioners and determine when do you want to reopen, what does that look like, how do meetings look like going forward. But to Commissioner Knopf's point, I believe each commissioner has a county laptop that if you want, you could even just leave it here on your desk and we can set that up. It wouldn't be very difficult. But happy to have those conversations with each of you offline if you want to get into it more.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Ford?
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Let's move on. Let's see, State's Attorney, is Ms. Wamstead there?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I do not have anything for the board's consideration today. Thank you.
My kind of report. Thank you very much. Committees, reports. Well, let's see, Commissioner Ingen, you're on top of my screen, so anything from you?
Muted.
You're muted, Mr. Ingen.
Yeah, try to keep on top of that. No report, just like Haley.
Okay, Commissioner Knopf, you are next on my screen.
I have no report, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Rost, you're not on my screen, but you're next.
Yeah, I have nothing to report.
Okay, and I don't think I've got anything either. We've talked about everything. So, next we've got unfinished new business. Anything either before the commissioner or with Ms. Nelson?
Mr. Chair, I have nothing.
Okay. So that's good. Correspondence, anything there, Ms. Nelson, that we need to know about?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, just a thank you from the Greater Grand Forks Community Service.
Yeah, they're always good about that. And then the recorder's refund that's on there.
Oh, yes, and that's just informational, just so you know that we did receive a refund from Endron.
Well, we're to adjournment unless somebody's got something to add. We have a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Might be all night.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?